Hello and welcome along to another edition of Super 7, a show where we ask a current or former rider to give us his dream team, his ultimate 1 to 7, his Super 7. My name is John McGilvery.
And I'm Liam Rudden, and once again tonight we are joined by a very special guest who'll be sharing with us 7 riders that mean something to him, 7 special riders. Maybe they were riders that inspired him as a lad, maybe they were riders that he's ridden with on the track, or maybe they're just simply legends of the Shale. We've got a great guest, as I said, tonight. As ever, we'll let John do the honours. John.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. We have a man who had a 20-year career in British Speedway, and we're delighted to welcome along Nigel Crabtree. Nigel, thanks for joining us on Super 7.
No problem at all. Glad to be
here. How's life for you now? Obviously, it's strange times just now. How are you coping with it all?
Yeah, good. To be quite honest with you, it's not really made a lot of difference to me because work hasn't changed. Nothing's changed, so obviously, we've got to be more careful, one thing and another, but generally things have stayed the same. We're just working away, and everything's okay, really.
And we were talking to a friend of yours, Stuart McDonald, and I understand, Stuart, you'd organised a Speedway bike for Stuart. Is he going down the Jason Crump path and getting a restart of his career?
I wouldn't think so. I think Stuart... I think he's just going to have a bit of fun, is Stuart, on the bike. I think it's actually the bike I had when I rode at Glasgow. And for whatever reason, I still had that bike. And it's the only thing I did have. Stuart wanted a bike. He mentioned it and he's ended up with it. I think he's only doing it to have a little bit of a play now and again. You know what Stuart's like. He'll be all right.
Did the bike need any work done to it, Nigel?
Yeah, it's been stood down at Stoke Speedway in the workshop for 20 years, so you can imagine what it's like. Yeah, the engine needs doing and one thing and another, so I don't know what Stuart will do. I have spoke to him a time or two since. He's taking the engine out, get that done, and he'll just play about with it and keep it, I suppose, as a little bit of a toy for himself.
And do you ever miss those days yourself?
Not one bit, no. I enjoyed every minute of it. Every minute, but since the day I packed up, it's never interested me even thinking about going and having another go. You know, obviously too old now. Years ago when I first packed up, no. I think there was possibly at one point when Dave Tatton at Stoke nearly persuaded me to, I think I'd missed a year and he nearly persuaded me to have a go, but I saw sense in the end and no, I didn't. I'd had, as you say, 19, 20 years. Came out of it relatively one piece, enjoyed every minute of it. Great times, bad times, happy times, sad times, and we'll leave it at that, and that's what I did.
Nigel, we've interviewed quite a few people over the last year or so since Liam and I have done this, and there seems to be almost a 50-50 split, or maybe not a 50-50 split, but a one swing to the other. There's either guys who are still involved with the sport, wouldn't spend a day without the sport, or the other end, like yourself, where it's like, no, I don't miss it. I don't really think maybe about it too much. Why is there such a big swing, do you think, between the two?
When I finished, I was involved at Stoke, and I've been involved at Stoke for more or less ever since I finished. And again, I enjoyed that. But as for riding one, no, never interests me. I wasn't a natural bike rider anyway, and it's not something I've had to work hard to get where I got, because as I say, I'm not a bike rider. I'm not natural. I'm not gifted like a lot of them. And I say when I finished, that's it. But I was being involved in Stoke, and really Stoke, I've been involved in Stoke since 1984, other than the occasions when I was at Glasgow, at Hull. Other than that, Stoke before it and Stoke after it. And then when Stoke shut down, that's it. That's me about done, I think, really. Yeah, I like to watch it on the TV, the Grand Prix and that. I think the Grand Prix are brilliant. But that's about it for me now.
How did you get started in the sport, Nigel? I mean, how did your interest develop?
I think we used to have a farm at Halifax when I was young. When I was a kid, And we went to Halifax one Saturday night, and then Nelson shut down. I didn't know that at the time. I was only a kid, as I say. It opened at Bradford. We went to Bradford, and I don't think for about 3 years, 4 years, we ever missed a meeting at Bradford, home or away. So that was a fantastic time. That was for me as a kid. Really good. Yeah.
So you're 1 to 7. We'll have a look at that now. What's been your thought process behind putting your 1 to 7 together then? What's been the thinking with the names that you've put in? Why have you put some of them in? And have you tried to get a team for any direction, or was it just 7 guys that you went, nope, they're the best 7 I can think of?
Well, it's not, they certainly aren't best 7 riders in the world, are they? But like, they're my 7 as I've grown up with as a kid, as I've rode with since, the best lads I've rode with. Not necessarily world champions, you know, and I rode at Oxford for a while with Hans Nielsen and what have you, but just the riders who I think my mates and who we've gelled with, and it's worked really good.
I think that's what we look for on here, Liam, isn't it? It's that personal thing. It's that these are the 7 guys that mean something to me. I'm sure we could all pick a team of riders, like you say, Hans Nielsen, Tony Ricardson, Jason Crump, you know, all these guys.
They don't, brilliant riders, aren't they? Obviously, world class, but they don't mean anything to me personally, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what you mean, yeah. So we'll get started with your 1 to 7 then. We're starting off with an Englishman who started at a track I had never heard of until I did a bit of research on this, and you mentioned that there at Nelson. Who do we have then at number 1?
Well, as I said, we went to Bradford and we never missed meetings at Bradford. And I've got to say, my number 1, Sid Sheldrick, who was up in Scotland for a year or 2 at Paisley, wasn't he?
Yeah, 75, yeah.
Is that when it was?
Yeah.
I got to know the Sheldrick family. My mum and dad were friends with that, just through going to Speedway at Bradford. I think, strange how it all happened. It was all over a pint of milk. Would you believe? Seriously. He asked, could somebody bring him a pint of milk next week to the meeting? And we had a farm, cows, milk. And I remember my mum and dad taking him this pint of milk, and it all went on from there. And I had such a good life as a kid. I used to spend hours and weeks, and I mean weeks, at his house at Sheffield, travelling around different Speedway meetings when he was riding for Bradford, wherever. Sitting in car waiting for him while he was in a woman's house. I've done everything like that. I've had to sit and wait for him, believe you me. And then they moved to Blackpool. They had a guest house. I used to go and stop there all summer holidays. Oh, I had a ball. Imagine as a kid living with like this idol of mine, if you want, at the time, wasn't he? And going around to Speedway with him. What a life I was leading. And it was absolutely superb. Brilliant. Really enjoyed it. And so Sid was obviously my first one, because it was the first one I knew in Speedway. And when I started, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, Nigel, would it be fair to say that he was maybe the man that inspired you then to take it up?
Definitely, you know, because, and as I say, we used to have the farm at Halifax, and a lot of the Bradford lads and the Australians and New Zealanders, Alf Wells, Gary Peterson, who died, didn't he? Robin Adlington used to come to the farm and that. And so I lived around it for maybe 10 years before before I started riding. I was living around them, seeing how it all went on and everything else. So I was just brought up with it then, wasn't I? With the Sheldricks and everybody else from Bradford.
And what was Sid like on the track?
He always tells me you were good.
Of course he does.
If you know Sid. But no, what was he like on track? Messed too much. Now, he messed too much with his bikes. Sid should have been, I can remember him having one very good year, and that was at Paisley. And he had a very good year that year. And I think, well, I know again I'm right, he bought a bike off Eric Bulcock. And I think Eric Bulcock had won the British final on it the year before. I think I'm right on all this. And it transformed Sid and it made him into a different rider. But Sid being Sid, he couldn't help but medal. and he meddled too much with things. When it's going right, leave it. When it ain't broke, don't try and fix it.
I read that when he walked out on the track for the first Paisley Lions match, the promoter handed him a real life lion on a leash to lead on because they were the Paisley Lions.
So
is that the sort of thing that he would have been happy doing?
No, that's what McFarlane would be doing, wouldn't it? He'd be bringing that on, wouldn't he? Neil McFarlane, you know the
Neil
showman
McFarlane, yeah.
And that is when I first came across Neil McFarlane at Paisley in whatever year you tell me. Whatever year
75,
that was.
I think it was it?
Yep.
75? Well, that's when I'd first come across Neil McFarlane, I think, when he was up there. Sid was up there, because I'd go up with him when probably 15, as I say then. I can remember stopping at Neil McFarlane's house, wherever it was in Glasgow. I don't know. But that was my first coming across Neil McFarlane, would you believe?
That sort of thing happened. You know, there was a lot of colourful incidents like that in Speedway back in the day, and back when you raced, it was still there. And we sort of miss that now. Were you ever involved in anything like that in your time racing?
I think I was probably involved in a lot. I don't know really, but you know, them things happened, didn't they, in them days? Nowadays it doesn't happen, and I think it's to the detriment of Speedway. There's lots of things what don't happen, what used to happen. It was a show, wasn't it? You talk about McFarlane, Ian Thomas, and you can go on and on and on with these promoters. They put shows on, didn't they? It wasn't just about the 15 races. It was a show. Plus whatever happened in between, when there were a few scuffles, you know, somebody running up into the referee's box. Now, unfortunately, in my opinion, the referees are spoiling it, because the referees want to be seen to be running that meeting, or some of the referees, and they've taken the enjoyment out of it and the excitement out of it, my opinion.
What I would say, Nigel, is you rode at Glasgow in '93. As a 12-year-old kid, you mentioned about Sid and how you could get close to Sid and he was your hero. At 12 years old, my father would take me along to Shawfield and watch the Tigers. And you used to, at the end of every meeting, all the riders would have to come through the crowd to get to the dressing room.
Right. Yeah.
And as a kid, you know, a football supporter, I don't get near unless you're kind of at the barrier. With these guys, these were my heroes that were walking towards you. Like, wow, you know, you can touch these guys, you go up, you get an autograph. And we often talk, Liam, about the Speedway family, you know, and it's that closeness that I think makes Speedway stand out from a lot of sports.
Yeah, and you as a kid, you would get engrossed with it, wouldn't you? And you'd be nattering at your dad to take you next week then.
Yeah.
You know, and then riders coming through the crowd would quite happily talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, quite happy. And that's what makes Speedway, or made Speedway what it is really, is you could get close to them.
Yeah.
You could get close. Nowadays, I think they're all flying in and out the country, aren't they? Nobody's got particularly a lot of time for the people that's paying the wages anymore, I feel. But no, Shawfield was good for that, because the changing rooms, as you say, he walks right through the crowd to get into the change. And do you know something? We used to enjoy that as well.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it, walking through, talking to everybody. It was good. Yeah,
I wondered if
had a good meeting and won.
Yeah, I did wonder if some of the riders would see me and go, "Oh no, this guy again, he's here every bloody week."
No, not at all. No. Nobody ever thought that. Believe you me. Well, them ones I rode with at Glasgow, they were a right good set of lads. They were them 2 years, and nobody ever thought of that. I don't think you were allowed to think like that. To be honest with you, McFarlane wouldn't have that. No, McFarlane wouldn't have it. You know, because he knew who paid the wages and kept it going. It wasn't us as riders. It was supporters that kept it going. Without supporters, as last year proved, there's nothing. There's nothing. So
it must have been difficult if you'd had a bad meeting though. Nigel did actually lift you up, the fact that they were still there for you.
He'll tell us he never had one.
I had plenty, believe you me. I had plenty bad ones. But you know, the crowd still, they never give you an hard time at Glasgow. I say them 2 years at Glasgow were unreal, because like when you used to go to away meetings, would you believe there was more people there from Glasgow at some of the tracks than what there was home supporters. The Glasgow supporters were amazing that year. Them 2 years I was there, anyhow, I can only comment on them. Amazing. I mean, it was so good. Never got an hard time. And if you'd had a bad night, hey, next week, pat on the back,
Yeah.
and you can go next week. As long as we
Yeah.
won, we were all right.
Okay,
Bit
let's
like
go to your number 2. It's a rider with a very familiar surname, sadly no longer with us. A great loss to the sport. Who have you got at number 2?
Woofy, isn't it? Rob Woofington. I mean, me and Woofy were mates. I think when I first got to know him, I was about 15. Rob was just, well, we were both just plodding round. We barely could ride round, never mind race round. And we spent a lot of time together. Again, his mum and dad, his stepdad and my mum and dad, all friends. And, I've only been talking to Rob's mum this afternoon. She's just had a hip replacement done yesterday. So get well soon, Cynthia.
Yeah.
And I speak to her all the time. But Rob, we were very good mates. Well, all the way through. And it was very sad. And he'd be very proud of what Ty's doing right now. But no, Robbie, he was a rum lad, Woofy was. A rum lad, but we had some right times. Some of the stuff he got up to, I wouldn't dare tell you on here. But he was a top lad, was Rob. He was a top lad. Yeah. I mean, I can just tell you one thing. I mean, because we rode with each other at different places. I think I rode with him at Scunthorpe, rode with him at Stoke. I can't remember. And when he used to come to Stoke on a Saturday night, he'd come and he'd open the van up and there'd be drills, there'd be whatever tools you want in the back. And it was like opening a shop up. This is 25 quid, that's 20 quid. Oh, and he just used to open the van and it was full of tools, but he was selling. Honestly. Oh, it was just like a workshop he opened up and sold it. Don't know where he'd got them from. Never asked.
The thing boy of Speedway.
Yeah, that's how it was in them days, wasn't it? That's how it was.
Well, nowadays, of course, the riders are athletes, and they're so zoned in. They're completely professional. But back in your day, did you still have a day job as well? And were you riding in the evenings? I mean, was you riding almost like a hobby, or was it taken as a proper occupation?
Well, it was a job. It had to be a job because there was a lot of expense in it. But I always worked as well because I wasn't one for sitting about doing nothing. I didn't have a mechanic. What I paid all the time, I had a few lads that helped me out at meetings and that. I used to do my own bikes. I used to drive. My missus drove up to Glasgow for us when we rode there. But generally, I did everything myself, as did all the lads on this 7. They all did it themselves. Again, unlike nowadays, where a lad that can just poodle around needs a full-time mechanic working for him. And they wonder why they can't afford to ride Speedway. But hey, again, I don't know, do I? I don't know. Go on.
Did I read that you took a year out the year you got married?
Yeah, I got married, and Speedway was just an hobby from me being 16 to 20. Speedway was just somewhere to go and ride a bike on a nighttime ride now and again. I wanted to do well, but I wasn't good enough to do well. I wasn't good enough. And I got married. We had a mortgage, and I thought, this hobby's got to go. Can't afford it. So, as I say, I was a farmer. So I took a job working on farm contracting, doing all sorts of, and work like 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks on trot without having a week off in summer. And it got to end of summer one year. I just had the year out, as you say. And I thought, it's got to be something better than this. All I'm doing is working here. I missed all the summer because working. And that's when I went to Scunthorpe year after that. And the rest just carried on for another however many years after that. And it was all right. It was good. Scunthorpe was very good. That was good, Scunthorpe. Because they were an old club, weren't they? Never done anything, never won anything. And then my second year at Scunthorpe, we went unbeaten at home in the league and what have you. So they'd never known that before. And I don't know what they called it in them days. You used to finish in the top 6 or the top 8, and you used to have a playoff with the top 8. I don't know what it was called now. And we even got into that again. Some at Scunthorpe had never known it. But it was a good year, that was.
To do and go and have a skid and things like that. Obviously, it's very different now in terms of even just being able to go for a skid. It's one, the cost of it all, and two, if you want to have a practice day then the setup and the organising that goes behind that is incredible. How much easier was it then to do that?
It wasn't. Do you know, when people say about the expense, I know of riders now, and I would say not much better than I was. And I know one in particular, I won't mention his name, he's got 7 bikes, and he's only a second division rider with 7 bikes. And then they wanted thousands of pounds to sign on. And why does he need 7 bikes? You know, because I can guarantee you, he will not do nowhere near as many meetings as a season as what I and the likes of me did. You Kenny McKinners and all them riders, they will not do anywhere near that amount of meetings as we did. And we'd do it on 2 bikes, maybe another spare engine, but 2 bikes. And my year at Glasgow, my last year at Glasgow, I did it on 1 bike and 1 engine. Full year, nothing else. So we talk about expense what is brought on by themselves. Full-time mechanics, big vans, what don't do any miles to gallon. You know, you've got to cut your cloth according, haven't you? You can't go. And honestly, speak to your Kenny McKinners and all that, genuine lads like him, and they'll tell you the same, I'm sure.
Well, so there we go. It's Speedway can be done on a budget then, do you think?
I think if it's a budget, or well, you cut your cloth according, and you can do it a lot less than what these lads are doing it for. You know, and you've got to work as well, haven't you? And they say you can't get a job. There's plenty of work out there. You've got to, if you want to succeed at Speedway and to get yourself going, I think you've got to put yourself out at an early age to serve your apprenticeship and then move on to, hopefully, bigger and better things. And there are a lot of good English lads about. I think there's a lot of good English kids coming through, and it'd be great to see England again, once again, taking on the Poles, and let's beat them, you know, and the Aussies and everybody else. It'd be great to see these young kids. I love it seeing the young English lads coming through. But they've got to keep the feet on the ground.
Well, your team, I've just noticed, is all English-based riders as well. There's no, normally we go from one continent to the other side of the world. But you've kept it all in England. And my third rider is a man who spent a lot of his time at Hull and Newcastle. Who have you got at number 3?
Can't remember.
Tom Owen. Tom Owen.
Oh, well, the master, isn't it? The master. To my mind, he is, you know, you can talk about Joey's brother and everybody, but Tom, he was the master at it, mate, to me. And it was him. I went to Stoke because Tom was at Stoke the year before. Stoke were very unfashionable. They got Tom, and Tom fetched the other riders with him then, as you know, as times moved on. But he was just, and honestly, he worked as well. Worked all the time. Tom did, built up his own business. Worked. I can remember Tom one night. We rode at Exeter one Monday night, and I can't remember in them days if it was maybe back Weymouth Tuesday night, something like that. Tom went home, went to work the following morning because he had a meeting at work and on his digger. Went home and did his bike and come back down to Weymouth at night time, Tuesday night, with a clean bike after being at work at morning. You know, he just, he worked so incredibly hard, did Tom. And Tom will tell you again, he wasn't a gifted bike rider, wasn't Tom? He just worked hard at it, and he was determined. Determination got Tom where it did, and he was a hard man, Tom, hard man. But, you know, it was a pleasure. And when I won the pairs, Tom and I won the pairs, didn't we, at Hackney in 84. You know, I was so made up to win that with somebody like Tom, you know, who's far, far higher up the ladder than me, and brilliant. Great Tom, great man, Tom.
There's quite a few brothers race Speedway or have done over the years. Did you ever pick up on any rivalry between Tom and Joe?
Oh, there was plenty of rivalry between them. Yeah. One of them wouldn't give the other one an inch. Definitely not. No. You know, when they were at Newcastle riding with each other, they wouldn't give each other an inch in them days neither. No. They were both that way out, and they were going to be top man. You know, one didn't want the other one getting more than him. Plenty of rivalry. They were very determined, the pair of them. and very good, obviously, the pair of them.
Okay. Now at number 4, you've got a rider that I should have heard of, but the name's managed to escape me. He rode from 1980 to 1987. Who do you have at number 4?
Mike Wilding, that'll be, won't it?
That's Mike, yeah.
Yeah, well, I come across Mike at Scunthorpe in 82 would it be, I think, yeah. Mike came to Scunthorpe and we've been mates really ever since. And he was down at my house only a couple of months ago. We were talking and what have you. And again, like the rest of us in this team, just a lad trying to have a go at Speedway. And Mike was doing very well. And I don't know what happened to Mike. I think he got knocked about a bit. He went to Oxford after Scunthorpe and he got knocked about a bit there. And it seemed to knock the stuffing out of him a little bit. But Mike, certainly at one point, he was looking like he was heading right in the right direction. But again, we've been mates ever since then and to this day. So from 82 to now, we've been mates, and that's why I put Mike in as well. I mean, he was terrible with Mike. He'd start panicking when the Speedway Star come out in winter, and it's in the fixture list, and it said Middlesbrough versus Stoke, at Cleveland Park. He'd start panicking then about going to Cleveland Park in August. He hated the place. He'd have a full meltdown when it come to going there. But no, we've been mates for a lot of years, and real good friends.
Were there any tracks that you would rather have avoided, Nigel?
No, I can't say as there was. The only thing I'd say is Exeter was an hard place to go to, and you had to get your mindset. I mean, I think I went down to Exeter with Glasgow one year when we doubled up that time, and I'm not sure if I didn't get a maximum there one of the times. But as easy as you can go there and get a maximum, you go there and get 2 or 3 points and make yourself look a right pillock, really. You've got to be strong in the head, very strong-willed to go there.
And what was the reason behind that? Was it the safety or
that steel safety fence? Yeah. That doesn't do you a lot of good. You don't hit that twice, do you?
What was surely that no one at any point put their hand up and went, "Excuse me, that's mental." It's a steel safety fence. Did no one go put a bit of plank of wood up or something? Give us a break.
It's just, in them days, unlike now, there's a lot of rider power now about it, and I do think to a certain extent that is affecting Speedway as a whole. Too much rider power. In them days, I can remember folks talking about Charles Ochiltree for a name at Coventry, and it was Mr. Ochiltree. You knocked on his door and I don't know, it's only stories I've been told by different riders that rode there, possibly Charlie McKinnon one that rode for Coventry at a time, and you knocked on the door to Mr. Ochiltree's office and you waited for Mr. Ochiltree to shout, "Come in." So there was respect there, wasn't there? And I don't think there's a lot of respect nowadays too much. It's all self, me, a lot of it. But again, I'm not saying what's right, what's wrong. Like you said earlier, very, very professional now. And these men are now athletes, aren't they? With these diets, this training regime. I wouldn't have had time. I couldn't have done that. So I wouldn't have time because half the time I was working. Like Tom Owen, he worked all the time. He wouldn't have time for that. But now they're athletes, aren't they? And everybody's trying to get a little bit more out of things than the next man at the side of you. It's just how it is. It's just very, very professional. And it does look good. These Grand Prix shows what they put on. They do look good, don't they? You can see it's very professional. But unfortunately, English Speedway cannot afford to be that professional at the minute, can it?
Do you think a lot of the GPs now, we've spoken to a few people who believe it's just about the power in the bike now. It's almost hanging on full arm length as fast as the bike can go. Do you think it's lost an element of, I don't want to say ability because that's completely the wrong thing to say.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. Isn't it funny how, in general, British League Speedway, you can see, I don't know, for a name, your best man in your team can go out and win a race. Then the next race, he comes in last. Yeah. That never used to happen. That didn't. We never saw Ivan Major win 3 races and have a last. You know, I've made you out won 3 races and then have a second. But now it seems to be so easy to run a last or a win. Again, I don't know if that's bikes. You know, the bikes seem so unpredictable, but I think the riders maybe don't help themselves there. They hang off the side, don't they, with a foot up in the air and everything. Well, they can't have no control when the foot's up in the air. They sat back. They can't have enough control, but again, that's modern day stuff, isn't it?
5th rider then, Nigel, a man who was over 16 years in the sport, starting out at Ellesmere Port and ending up at Long Eaton to finish his career. Who have we got at number 5?
Well, another really good mate of mine, Eric Monahan, still mates again today. We've just been mates for, well, donkey's years, a bit like Mike Wilding, you know, just another mate. And Eric was such a good team man, possibly one of the best team men I ever rode with, and worked full time all the way through his career, all the way through. I once, and people, I don't know, some people might have seen it, some not. He had a really bad crash one night at Peterborough, an horrendous crash. I don't know if you've seen the fence at Peterborough. And Eric and Scott Norman went straight through the fence. It was horrendous. You know, I didn't think he'd get up from it. But true to style, Eric, he was such an hard man he was. Got up and his bike was absolutely wrecked. Completely wrecked. I don't think there was a piece of it he could use again. Went home. I can remember ringing him up the following morning, see how he was, and his wife, his partner at the time, saying, "Oh, he's not here, he's gone out for a run." Turns up at Saturday night at Stoke, ready to race with another bike built up. Such an hard man, but team man like you've never known. He was very, very, wasn't bothered about himself. As long as he got enough points for the team to win, that was good enough for him. Speedway was a hobby he enjoyed. He had a full-time job, a very good job. What he could work around Speedway with, but such a good team man. And we went down to Hackney, Eric and myself. We used to double up all the time in his van. One night, these 2 part-time Speedway riders went down to Hackney in 1980, whatever it was, and we won the pairs against all these glamorous international Speedway riders, whoever it was, Previn Eriks and all them lot. And these 2 northerners, like part-time northerners, come down there and take all the glory. That was some night, because nobody expected us winning it. But again, that was Eric. He had a stormer. I don't think he got beat all night. And we rode together all the time at Stoke. And we always rode very well together. He'd never give me an inch, mind. But there again, I wouldn't give him an inch neither. So... But we rode side by side when we had to do and did what we had to do. And he was a very, very good, probably the best team man out of 7, or one of the best.
Nigel, what makes a good team man? I mean, what is it that they do in the pits, that they do as part of the team, that makes them so special?
In my mind, I never wanted to be. I never had any aspirations of being a world champion. Never thought I was anything like that. All I ever I wasn't interested in riding any world championship events. I wasn't really interested in riding in the National League Riders Championship. The team events is what I liked. So I think them type of riders, maybe, to be good, you've got to be very selfish, haven't you? I'm sure these good lads must be selfish. They've got to be so selfish, hard, not to care in the world for their opponents, really. And that's what makes them world champions, isn't it? That's the difference between the good ones and the lesser lights, if you like. And I was just interested in the team doing well. And the lads, and I think that's how second division Speedway used to be. As we've said, it has now become a lot more professional. Jason Crump's in the second division this year, isn't he? You won't get no more professional than Jason Crump. I don't know whether it's good or it's bad. I have no idea, but that's the way Speedway is going, and I hope it comes good. I hope it comes good for them all.
Of course, back in those days, you rode for your team. You would have had your one team, your one team colour. That's who you rode for. You didn't have 5 or 6 different teams around the world, and that's made a big difference.
Well, yeah, because when you're riding for however many teams, no sooner have you jumped off the bike riding for that team, you're on the way. You may be going to an airport, aren't you, to fly out to go and ride for another team. I don't know whether you have a lot of loyalty, do you, to that team, but maybe promoters nowadays don't have a lot of loyalty to riders as well. I don't know. I'm not sure how it all pans out really, but I certainly think years ago there was a lot more loyalty between riders and promoters and riders, I think, in them days. And also I think one of the other things where I think Speedway's lost its way a little bit is, you know, you talk Ellesmere Port, you know, John Jackson and the other riders, I could name Eric when he rode it out. They lived there. Halifax, Kenny Carter, Eric Bulcock, they all lived there. You know, Bellevue, the Mortons, the Collins, they lived there. I can always remember there's a young kid at Stoke. I don't think he packed in, he didn't ride for very long. I don't know whether he was going to make anything of himself or not, but Stoke made a bit of a big thing because he were a local lad, signed for Stoke, went and rode in the Conference League, whatever it was, you know, the meeting after not the second division, the next one. And I think there was something like 10 of his mates came to watch him that night. Just 10, he was a nobody at the time, but 10 mates came to watch him. Now, if he'd have come good, progressed, how many of them mates had gone home, told their mates? And again, it brings people in, doesn't it? Local lads riding for the local. You've got it at Glasgow there. Are you a Glasgow man or Edinburgh?
Edinburgh.
Oh, I thought you were, and all you know.
Behind us, mate.
Is that Edinburgh, is it? Right, yeah, right. It's not good then talking about these lot, is it? But, you know, look at the McKinners and what have you. They're local lads, aren't they, that rode for the local club.
When you look at Edinburgh in early kind of 2000s, mid 2000s, the Sean Stoddarts, the Andrew Tullys, Derek Sneddons, they all lived within, you know, distance of Armadale.
And surely that's got to attract, you know, where Derek Sneddon or where anybody, if Derek Sneddon, I know I lived in Stoke when I rode for Stoke. I know I wasn't born here or anything, but I lived in Stoke. And my next door neighbour and his son-in-law, and they used to come watch us. And, you know, it's all about putting bums on seats, isn't it? And again, I was a bit of a local lad riding for the local club, if you like. And I think it's lost its way a little bit like that, hasn't it? Because nobody knows half the riders now will ride for you, do they? You know, you don't know them. And it's a shame, but hey, progression, isn't it? And that's how it is. Maybe I'm too old and maybe, you know, can't move with the times. I don't know. It's a shame because I do love Speedway.
Yeah.
Well, at number 6, you mentioned this name a couple of moments ago. We have the 1975 New Zealand champion, riding from, 71 to 87? Who have you got at number 6?
Who have we got at number 6?
He's got a brother.
Do you know, I can't remember.
His brother was called Chris.
Dave Moore. I mean,
Dave Moore, yeah.
Yeah, of course it is. I rode with Dave Moore in about the only real long spell I had in the first division in them days was at Sheffield, and Mort was there then. And Mort, you know, Dave Morton in his time was a top man and would have gone a lot further but for injuries. And, you know, I've never met a more down-to-earth fellow than Dave Morton was. And I still speak to him nowadays. In fact, only a couple of years ago, I was going along the road side of a canal, and I looked across, and there's this fella stood on this barge. And who were it? Dave Morton. It was Mort stood on the barge, like, so pulls into the lay-by, goes across, and has a chat with Mort. But such again, just a normal lad, a normal country lad was Mort. Did good at Speedway, and he was always dead right with me. And I think if anybody's got the time to be right with me, well, fair play. He was a good guy, was Mark, good guy. I like him. And I say we have seen him a few times, and I've spoke to him a time or two since my riding days. And that I say Mark was on the. He's got a barge, goes on the canals, and I met him up a time or two at the pub near the on the canal. And good guy is Mark, good guy, really good fella.
You'd said that obviously he's a local lad as well, and I'm looking at some of these guys in your team, and there's a lot of kind of a bit here, a few years there, a few years there. Do you think the days of guys being at a club for, you don't really hear many testimonials anymore?
No, again, like I said, isn't it? I think there's not a lot of loyalty from riders to promoters and vice versa, isn't there? There seems to be. I mean, they'll say because of the points limit. The points limit had always been in force, but I don't know. I just don't think there's the loyalty on either side, if you like. There will be with some clubs. Edinburgh, your club. I'm sure Edinburgh are pretty loyal to the riders. Chris Van Straten at Wolverhampton is very loyal to his riders. And there are clubs that are loyal to the riders, and riders will be loyal to them. But there's a lot of clubs and promoters that really, I don't think they're that loyal to each other and care that much for each other, to be honest with you. I don't know.
Nigel, one of the things that's coming across from listening to you is that there's a great, there was a great camaraderie between you and the guys that you did ride with. There was a lot of loyalty amongst the riders. I mean, you said earlier that you didn't give each other an inch when you were racing, but was there a great deal of protectiveness towards each other when you were racing?
Yeah, I mean, when I rode with Eric, he's a hard man, and I can remember one night, I don't want to name him really, he'd given Eric a bit of an hard time in one race, and then he was in between me and Eric on the start line at Stoke, and I'll tell you what, he give Eric an hard time, but not half as much as hard time as we gave him when we come out the start, I can tell you. But again, that's how it was, and I'm sure there was a scuffle at pit gate afterwards. But did it matter? Is it not part of the entertainment, part of the night? Give the crowd something to excite them about and that? I mean, the worst one's up your way, isn't it? And I do like the man. I do like the man. I've loads of time for him. The worst one's just down the road from you lot, isn't he? Granty. He was terrible, honestly. But I have loads of time for Granty. Lovely, lovely man. Terrible what's happened to him in recent times. But to ride against him, let me tell you, he was an animal. And when you had Davy Fairbairn, who was promoter again, Davy Fairbairn, he run a show at Berwick and he was there for Berwick to win. And it'd pay Granty, get rid of him. And Granty got rid of me one night, big time. Got rid of me big time, did Granty. Yeah, and he used to come and stop at my house with Granty now when his lad used to ride at Stoke in the Conference League. They used to stay with me and that, and we've laughed many, many times about it. But, them things happened all the time in Speedway. There always somebody getting put in fence or whatever. It happened all the time. Just got up, remembered, and tried and got your own back. But I don't know whether I ever got my own back on Granty, to be honest with you. Kept away from him, it was safest. Surviving, that's what it's called.
Live to fight another day.
That's it. Yeah.
So we'll finish off your lineup with a guy who started out north of the border as well, had 2 spells up here and had a 15-year career in the sport. Who have you got at number 7?
Derek Richardson. Now, I did say earlier on, didn't I? Eric was one of the best team man I've ever known. Well, Derek Richardson falls into that mould as well. Derek, fantastic fella. And I seemed to ride with Derek and moved about a bit with Derek. I rode with him at Newcastle, at Scunthorpe, at Stoke. And Derek, another one, worked full-time all the way through his career, even when he was at his best, when he was in Scotland and riding for Bellevue, always worked full-time. And I think to this day, still works at the same place where he used to work, as far as I'm aware. But a smashing fella, Derek. Another one, down to earth, just a northern lad, enjoying riding his Speedway bike and trying to earn a few quid at it because he got a living away from it as well. Very good team man, Derek. Very good. And very underrated as well, I think Derek was. Very underrated, but good guy, yeah, Derek. Yeah. I seen him only 2 years ago. They had an end of season do at Stoke for a lot of riders that used to ride there, and Derek was there. And he's no different. He's still the same Yorkshire lad he was 20 years ago. He's Derek. But good guy.
Now, we don't normally do this, do we, John?
No.
But we're going to get the track spare out tonight, so you can have a number 8, just in case.
Well, the track spare.
You need to put somebody in there.
Yeah. somebody will have a ride when there's nobody else there. Let's go. I believe you work with him, don't you, John? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we both work for the same company. Yeah, Arnold Park. Yeah,
I believe so. Stuart McDonald. We'll go with Stuart McDonald. Stuart, when I went to Glasgow, me and my wife, we got very friendly with like Stuart, his family, mum, dad, everybody, and to this day we're still very, very good friends. My missus speaks with Stuart's mum once, twice every week without fail. I speak to his dad regular. I speak to Stuart regular. Probably because his car I've got of a shopping is no good. No, I don't mean that at all. It's absolutely brilliant. This is the Stranger. Absolutely brilliant. And we've become very good friends. And I used to stop at Stuart's when I was up in Scotland. And again, to this day, very good friends with Stuart and his family, and speak to him all the time. And Stuart was another one I can remember when in his early days he was starting out, and I used to try and help him. And if he could get in front and I could sit behind him, I'd sit behind him, whatever. I wasn't bothered. 2 paid 3, put the same amount of pounds in my pocket as 3 points did. Never ever made any difference to me. As long as I could get the 2 paid 3, that was good enough. I didn't want 1, I wanted 2 paid 3, mind. But it didn't matter to me how many bonus points. As long as I got him paid for him, that was all that mattered. But yeah, Stuart, he's done well for himself and moved on. And as you say, now working Arnold Clark's and doing very well for himself. Very determined, Stuart. Very determined, standing on his own 2 feet. Made some big decisions and done very well for himself. Good on him. Good on him.
No, absolutely. He speaks very highly of yourself as well.
Oh, I don't know why, but anyhow, that's it, isn't it? That's it. We're just 2 working lads, really.
Yeah, no, I like your team. I'm very impressed with your team, Nigel. I like that it's just a team of guys that you've ridden with.
That's
and
right.
It means something to you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do, because it's no good me saying Hans Nielsen, Eric Gundus, and everybody else, because I don't particularly know them guys. They're absolutely brilliant, aren't they? World-class stars, superstars. But I've gone for lads that I've spent time with, I've rode with, and I still spend time with some of them now even. So, that's why I picked my 7 as they are. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant.
We need a team name for your 7, Nigel.
Old Crocs, I reckon, now, Old Crocs now.
Would there be a team manager that you've worked with that would hold this 7 together?
Yeah, there's 2 really. There's 2 who I would say is the best. What I've rolled with. One of them, obviously, you'll love him. You will over there, won't you? McFarlane.
Yeah.
He was very good at putting on a show, wasn't he? And what have you? And the other one, Eric Bulcock. Absolutely brilliant, but Eric Bulcock. He could tell you a different story. You could see him every day of the week and he'd tell you a different story. I don't know whether these stories were true, but he'd always tell you a different story. Every time you saw him, he'd be walking around the track and he'd be coming out with another story. And whether they were true or not, I don't know. But Eric Bulcock was a very good motivator as well. McFarlane was very good at, like he worked for W. Oates, didn't he? He worked for Jimmy Beaton, putting on a show. And to be fair, he won the league twice, didn't he, at Glasgow? So he must have been doing something right in them 2 years, really. It all just clicked, didn't it? Because really, other than Robert Narge, Bosey, I think the rest of the team were just the normal, average, run-of-the-mill Speedway riders, really. Walshy, Mick Powell, dead good lads. Mick Powell's a good lad, really good lad, Mick. Walshy was. And we were all just, other than, say, Robert Narge, Bosey, they were your top men, weren't they, for Glasgow then? The rest of us made the numbers up and did enough. And I must say I had 2 good years up there in Scotland, and I used to like the local derbies with Edinburgh. There's always a bit of niggle there, wasn't there? Always a bit of niggle there. And McFarlane,
it's never changed.
but it shouldn't, should it?
No, you're right, it shouldn't. Yeah.
Because if we're all nice and we're all best mates, the crowd won't come and see it if there's no niggle and a little bit of wind up here and there and a bit of hard riding.
Look at some of the football down south just now. These guys are coming off after a game, they're cuddling each other and all the rest of it. And it's a Liverpool Man United game or something like that. You don't want to see that. You want to see, the guys giving everything. and almost falling out with everyone to get
That's
that win
it.
for their team.
And that's how Speedway used to be, isn't it? I mean, I've seen some right ding-dongs at Edinburgh with, especially when, because obviously there was problems, weren't there, at Edinburgh, Glasgow, when Kenny went from Glasgow to Edinburgh. It riles everybody, gets everybody revved up. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. You know, don't need everybody to be good mates and that. You need a bit of argy-bargy on that track and get some shoving
Again,
and
that's
pushing.
what puts
Bums on
in
seats.
Yep,
Entertainment. Entertainment. Yep. We don't want to see anybody get hurt.
No.
Don't want to see that by any means. And I certainly didn't in my day. I still don't. But it's entertainment. And if there's a bit of argy-bargy, gets the crowd revved up, so be it. But the referees have got to let that happen. Then they've got to stop this stopping it. They've got to let it happen, I believe. But maybe I'm too old, as I said, and maybe that's not the way nowadays. Don't know.
It's all part of the drama, Nigel. It's all part of the drama
so.
that builds the meeting, that builds the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's what I always thought anyway. And building that drama where your team is 7, who's going to be the man that's in charge of them all? Who's going to be the captain?
There's only one man in there.
Can calm you down or rile you up?
There's only one man for that job, isn't there? The master himself, Tom. Only one man for that.
It's heat 15. You're needing a 5-1. Which two do you send out to
Tom
go and get
Eric.
You that 5-1? Tom Evans.
Tom and Eric. Yeah. It never bothered Eric, and Tom was good enough anyhow, so it didn't bother him. Definitely Tom and Eric, without a shadow of a doubt. You're hosting the meeting yourself. Do you have a special referee that you take along? Yeah, take Jim McGregor. No, just hey. Well, we all know what happened there, don't we? we'll gloss over that one. Hey, he's not a bad referee for a Glasgow timekeeper and mate of Dougie Hopes. Let's say no more, eh? When I fell out with Dougie Hope, then.
Anyway, let's move on quickly to the 10 quick-fire questions.
Hey, listen. And, what happens?
Start you off with. It does, yeah. Let's start you off with a nice, easy one. When was the last time you were on a Speedway bike, Nigel?
Oh, that ain't as easy. I'd have a go around Stoke at one practice one day, I would think. But I would think 20 years ago. 20 years ago. Yeah, never been on one since. No, just one day. I can remember having a ride around Stoke one Monday after. Well, it wasn't even a practice, actually, because I used to help Dave do the track down there. And we were doing the track and we'd got it finished and it looked nice. I said, it would be nice to have a ride around there. I went and got my bike out the workshop, poodled around and had a nice steady ride around for a few laps. But that'd be 20 years ago. The bike what Stuart's now riding. Oh, God. Yeah. Do you have a lucky, or did you have a lucky or favourite helmet colour? No, nothing like that. No, just whichever one I had to have on, put on and let's get going.
Any preference gate-wise, outside, inside?
At Stoke, I used to love gate 4. Used to love gate 4 at Stoke. I could make them good off gate 4 and with a bit of luck, try and run everybody onto grass by the time we got to the first corner. That was my motto at Stoke. It was, and if you would ever speak to Rob Grant, he will tell you that tale. He will tell you that tale. And that's why he did what he did to me, Eric. But again, we can sit and laugh about it, can't we? We didn't laugh about it at the time, but hey, that was Speedway. That's how it goes. Is it tea or coffee for you? Tea. I've just finished one now, by the way.
And if you hadn't been a Speedway rider, what occupation would you have followed?
Farmer, definitely a farmer. Yeah, we had his farm. Then we sold the farm eventually. We moved to this other place at Doncaster where my dad, he was the milkman there. He looked after like 200 odd cows. When I left school, I worked there. So I would have just carried on working on the farm. And a job I really enjoyed as well. But unfortunately,
did you miss the farming?
Yeah. But like everything else, like Speedway now, farming's completely changed. Farming isn't farming as I would know it. Farming is now like a factory. It's just like a factory. Them cows never go outside now. Some cows, they just always stop inside. It's just a factory, and just the way how things change, just same as it has done at Speedway. Whether it's for right or wrong, it's a business, and that's how it's gone. So, do you have a favourite pastime or hobby? Speedway, really. Yeah, and also now, as I say, I drive a wagon. There's only 3 of us where I work. I've got a nice fancy wagon, a new wagon, and go all over Europe. And as well as my job, I think that's probably my hobby as well a little bit now. I enjoy it. I've been very lucky, really. All my time I've done, like on the farm, I did Speedway. I've always, wherever I've worked, I used to have my own JCBs at one time, and I've always enjoyed whatever I've done. And I enjoy the wagons now. Maybe I'm getting a bit older and need to spend a bit more time at home, mind, but hey, we keep going a bit yet. We're all right yet a bit.
You can't get better than that. Do you have a favourite film?
Any comedy films, really. You know, the likes of, what's it called? Crocodile Dundee, them type films. Any comedy film, something to laugh about. You know, there's enough not to laugh about in the world. So, you know, something to laugh about. The old Del Boy there, you know, all that stuff. I think it's brilliant that I like all the comedy stuff, you know, the old comedy stuff, really.
Do you prefer the race suit or the race jacket?
I don't know, but I do understand when people say they can't tell one from another with the race suits. And that was one of the things with Speedway I wanted. You could tell, you knew it. You knew a rider. If they announced that rider's come out and it wasn't him, you knew him instantly it wasn't that rider because you knew what he was like with his leathers and that. But I can see again how, times change and it's race suits. I would have said body colours and everybody have their own gear. But again, we move forward, don't we? And
all for the TV, isn't it?
And if that's the way it's working, that's what we've got to do, isn't it? And you've got to be prepared to move with it. If you don't move with it, you'll just get left behind and fade away. Unfortunately, I don't say, again, I don't know what's right, what's wrong, just personal preference, isn't it, really? But I would have said body colours and people with their own leathers on, their own style. I would think so. For me.
Okay, penultimate question. What is the worst thing about Speedway?
The worst thing about it, I think nowadays there's just, you are? Keyboard warriors. Honestly, there's no wonder. You know, some of these people with these keyboards, they give the job a right slating. And I don't care what anybody says. You know, that place behind you there, when there's 4 riders out in a race and it's a good race, you're not telling me somebody kicking a ball about on a football field or somebody with a piece of wood in their hand knocking some balls about on a table is better than them 4 lads racing round there, knocking shite out of each other. You know, it's got to be better, hasn't it? But again, people just want to knock the sport. How about getting behind it a bit? It's all right, we can all knock it, but, you know, it ain't easy nowadays, is it? Nothing's easy nowadays. But let's not just keep knocking it all the time. Let's try and get behind it. I mean, I think you lads at Edinburgh, you've got a real, like, you know, like your supporters all seem loyal. Your promotion, it's been there since year dot, hasn't it?
Yeah. Mid-80s, yeah.
How long?
They've been the mid-80s, 84.
Right, and I take me out. I mean, John Campbell, I've fallen out with him more times than I can care to imagine. Pardon?
Yeah, really?
Don't be like that. But John's been there.
That was with John, not you.
Yeah, I know. But John's been there donkey's years. And where's his heart? His heart is in Edinburgh Speedway.
100%.
And I take my hat off to him, Alex. You know, absolutely brilliant. You know, they love their Edinburgh Speedway. And I hate to hear it when folks are knocking it. And everybody can't win, can they? Everybody can't win. There's got to be winners and losers. I know it's not nice when we're always losers, but I just think things should be relaxed a little bit. These referees, let things go a little bit more. Don't see it. You know, I can remember when I was team managing at Stoke, one referee, I'm not going to mention her name, and there was some elbowing as you go to the first corner, nothing nothing like what they used to be, let me tell you, years ago. And she excluded that Stoke man. I said, what's that for? She says, he pushed him. I says, bloody right, he pushed him. I told him push him. I said, you know, what's he going to do? Like, let him go first. And she excluded him. You know, just let it. It's an hard game. Who's the biggest draw in Speedway? The biggest draw.
Well,
which rider's the biggest draw in Speedway?
You're thinking Pedersen, aren't you?
Why have you said that?
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
That's what I would have said. Yeah.
Because he's so controversial.
Should you not have been able to tell me 10, 15, 20 names there of controversial riders? You've told me one. And
Pedersen.
people, not Nicky Pedersen. This is why the sport needs them people.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can only tell me one name. Freddie's getting there, isn't he? Freddie's getting a bit nasty with it. Bring it on. Let's have that sort of, you know. Again, Nicky Pedersen, I like Nicky Pedersen. I like his attitude. He ain't there to make friends. Okay, bit over the hill now, possibly Nicky. But he wasn't there to make friends. He was there to win world titles. And world titles he won. Didn't make any friends.
We spoke about this in a previous interview, Liam, where do we think now it's maybe a bit of a travelling circus where these guys are just together so much that inevitably friendships happen. And therefore it's difficult to take that, you know, in a one-off world final in the early 80s, it was a one-off bang.
That's right. Yeah.
8, 10, 12 rounds. You know,
and they spend a lot of time with each other, don't they? Yeah. Quite possibly that's right, isn't it? Yeah, but you still don't have to be nice. You can still give them an option. The throttle goes both ways, you know. It just go one way. That's what they always told me anyway. You know, and Nicky Pedersen is just a massive draw wherever he goes, or was, not so much now. Freddie Lindgren. Freddie can be a bit naughty and controversial, but so be it. That's how it needs to be.
You said earlier, sorry, I was going to say, you said earlier about the keyboard warriors, and the keyboard warriors now very much are, you know, you used to have hard riders, and now the minute anybody's a hard rider, they're a dirty rider.
Yeah, and they want him thrown out the sport. They want him thrown out the sport, don't they?
But there is a difference, though, isn't there, Nigel? What would you say that difference is?
Yeah, but again, you go back years and there were some hard men up there with you, your Kenny McKinners and all that lot. They were hard men. And Kenny, you know, he wouldn't leave you note. But again, the throttle goes both ways. And you know, when you were in front of him, don't leave him note. But Kenny was a top man, and I also got on fine with Kenny. But he wouldn't leave you note. You know, he wouldn't be nasty.
You probably don't expect these guys to leave you. A good rider and to respect the guy. You don't want them to leave you.
Yeah. You know, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, over the years, you could go back 20 years and you could name dozens of riders what were naughty. Naughty. Every team would have a naughty rider in them, a bad one in them. You know, I've said him, Granty were nasty at Berrington Loft, because he was such a big, clumsy article. He were odd Granty. He could just take all the track up, couldn't he, with bits of big and that. And he was nasty, was Granty. He was nasty, but you knew he was nasty, so you tried not to get into a position to let him be nasty with you. And that's same with Nicky Pedersen. When they moan about him because he stuffed him in the fence, you know he'll stick you in fence, so don't give him that chance to do that. Yeah. But, you know, I don't know. Again, I don't know. Well,
last question. What's the best thing about Speedway?
4 men racing round, hard as nails, not giving an inch. Nothing better, is there? Nothing better.
I don't think anyone can disagree with that.
Nothing better. Let's just bring it on and let's hope Speedway can pick up. I hope it can. And get going and get the crowds in it deserves. Because it does deserve crowds in. Yep. People put a lot of time and money into it. To not get maybe a lot out of it. So these promoters, some of them are losing fortunes, aren't they? But they keep going year after year. You know, across the road there, over in the west, you men over there, you know, they've put a lot of money in there, and it's a nice little setup now, isn't it? I've never been.
They've certainly made a big improvements at Ashfield, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, have they? Yeah. But I mean, Edinburgh needs Glasgow, I would have thought, and Glasgow needs Edinburgh.
Definitely.
They both need each other, don't they? Surely. It's got to be good. If it's like it used to be, they both need each other. And it's good when them two teams race against each other. And You've just got to get somebody to add a bit of needle to it.
Yeah.
And I think Speedway in general just needs a fraction of the passion that you've shown us today, Nigel.
I won't be the only one saying that. You've heard that from other riders you've had on here. I don't know who you've had on, to be honest, but I would note. But I just enjoyed doing what I did. I just enjoyed doing what I did. Yeah.
Well, listen, Nigel, we're running out of time, sadly, but thank you very, very much for joining. It's been a fascinating hour or so talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it myself. And ring Stuart McDonald up tomorrow, telling him you're talking to a great guy last night.
I will do. Nigel, listen, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. We'll be back soon with another former or current rider here on Super 7 to tell us about his ultimate 1 to 7. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.